Week 4 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I looked at off the wire this week. So most of these options are streaming options with decent matchups here in Week 4. The first DST is the Minnesota Vikings. I know the Vikings, one of the worst defenses in the league. Week 1 versus Tampa, they didn't do much in that ball game at all. 20 points allowed, a sack. Week 2 at Philly, 34 points allowed, 4 sacks and interception. And Week 3 versus the Chargers, 28 points allowed, a fumble recovery. So Week 4 here, good matchup at the Panthers, even though we just saw Andy Dalton in this offense have a big ball game with Dalton throwing over 300 yards and Adam Thielen receiving over 140 yards in that ball game. So right now, Minnesota as a 1 week streaming option at the Panthers, I think they could go out there and make a few plays. And this Minnesota team, they're getting desperate now. 0-3 on the season. I think something has to break for them. So I think this defense, they can make a few plays in this one, especially if Bryce Young comes back and starts in this game. Even if Andy Dalton's back there, if you get a hand on him, it's pretty much going to be a sack. And he's also a turnover-prone quarterback as well as Andy Dalton throughout his career. So right now is a streaming option, even though they haven't done anything so far as this Minnesota Viking DST. They're available in 97% of fantasy leagues. The next DST is the Houston Texans. So the Texans available in 99% of fantasy leagues here. But they got a pretty good matchup coming up versus the Pittsburgh Steelers here is this Houston Texan team. So right now, the first few weeks for Houston, Week 1 at Baltimore, decent ball game. 25 points allowed before sacks and into fumble recovery. Week 2 versus Indianapolis, they didn't do anything. 31 points allowed. And then Week 3 at Jacksonville, they made Trevor Lawrence look like a poor quarterback in that one. 23 points allowed and into a fumble recovery. Block kick and a punt return touchdown. So right now, Week 4 versus Steeler offense, where the running game's been struggling with Najee Harris. They're trying to get Jalen Warren going. Obviously, it's this Pittsburgh Steelers team. And Kenny Pickett, an inconsistent quarterback so far in his second year of his career. I think this Texan team in a home game could go out there and maybe make a few plays. I know in the deepest of leagues, if you're looking for a streaming defense, they're definitely a team you could use available right now in 99% of leagues. But like I said, with a poor offensive line there for the Steelers and a young quarterback, I think this Texan defense could go out there and be a decent ad this week. The next one's the Cincinnati Bengals. So this Bengal team obviously didn't play yet here Monday Night Football, but they're just another defense that I'm using as a streaming option with a great matchup here in Week 4 at the Tennessee Titans. So the first 2 ball games for this Bengal team, Week 1 at Cleveland, 24 points allowed, 3 sacks and into a fumble recovery. And then Week 2 versus Baltimore, 27 points allowed and a kick return touchdown. So right now, Week 4 here at Tennessee, we know this Titan team, one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Ryan Tannehill, in my opinion, one of the worst starting quarterbacks out of the 32 in the league as well. Quarterback that holds on to the ball too long. He don't get the ball to his playmakers. I know he don't have all the time in the world as well with the bad O-line, but it's just a bad combination. Not an accurate quarterback and a bad offensive line. So I think this Bengal team, well, obviously they're 0-2 right now, and definitely could fall to 0-3 here if Joe Burrow misses tonight's game. Their defense is going to come out in desperation in Week 4 in Tennessee, and I think they could go in there and make plays. The next defense is the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, I know their DST hasn't been all that great this season here, but they got a good matchup at the New York Giants, who have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Monday Night Football and extra days rest here for the Seattle team. And right now, the Seattle team trying to go 3-1. This is a big ball game where they could do it. We don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to play for this Giant team, even though, in my opinion, I think he will. But the Seattle team, we'll see if they can make some plays. And available right now in tons of leagues is 155% of leagues. Week 1 versus the Rams, 30 points allowed, a block kick. Week 2 with Detroit, 31 points allowed, but 2 sacks and into 2 fumble recoveries with a touchdown. And Week 3 versus the Panthers, 27 points allowed and 3 sacks. So right now is a streaming option at the New York Giants, especially if Barkley's out in this ball game. I think Seattle, they can make a few plays on Monday Night Football. Jamal Adams possibly could be back after he's coming off, obviously, devastating injury last season with the Achilles. So right now, while they're available and they got a decent matchup as a streaming option, I'd give them an ad this week in the 5th and final defense DST unit. I looked at off the wire here is the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers, another unit that's been up and down so far this season, but they've been dealing with injuries, especially Jair Alexander missed their last game. And right now, it's a division matchup here, Week 4 versus the Lions on Thursday Night Football, where there is a little more defense played in those Thursday night games than obviously on Sunday with regular days rest. So right now, Week 1 in Chicago, 20 points allowed, 4 sacks and into fumble recovery touchdown. Week 2 at Atlanta, 25 points allowed, a sack in it though. And week 3 versus the Saints, 17 points allowed and 4 sacks. So right now, they could get to the quarterback as this Packer team. They just got to find a way to make some turnovers. And I think here versus the Lions, it could be a tight contested game between the division rivals where they can make a few plays and possibly have a decent fantasy day. So right now, available in 72% of fantasy weeks. That's a few defense DST units I looked at off the wire in week 4 of the fantasy football season.